I came home expecting elk tracks and dead silence, and instead I found a laminated welcome sign nailed into my oak tree like my ranch had been turned into somebody's weekend theme park. And the best part is, the first person who saw me standing there was a woman in yoga pants who asked if I was the trail guide on my own land. Let me back up a sec, because the way this all started still makes my jaw tighten. I hadn't set foot on Hayward Ranch in almost 5 weeks. Work in Denver had stacked up like cordwood, and my last client insisted their backyard needed a boulder, so big we had to airlift it in. Yeah, that happened. So by the time I finally pointed my truck west, all I wanted was the sound of gravel under tires, elk bugling at dusk, the kind of quiet that makes you remember who you are. 12,000 acres of stubborn, honest dirt I'd poured my life into, my sanctuary, my reset button. So I turn off the highway, roll down that long gravel path toward my main gate, and I'm already tasting that piney air, already picturing coffee on the porch, maybe a little fence repair, maybe nothing at all. And then I see it. A sign. Not a random no littering somebody stapled up. No, this thing is professionally printed, laminated, mounted like a museum exhibit, nailed right into my oak. Welcome to HOA Ridge Life Trail, a guided nature experience. I just sat there in the driver's seat for a second, blinking like my brain was trying to load the right reality. Then I noticed there are more. Trail arrows. Branded stakes. A little wooden bridge over the creek I cleared last spring with my own hands. Trailhead markers like we're in a national park. I pull up by the old smokehouse, hop out, and I'm staring across my pasture like I've walked into somebody else's life. A dozen people are strolling the treeline taking photos, waving at my alpacas like they're at a Sunday farmer's market, and a couple of them are wearing matching forest green shirts with an elk logo and the words HOA Ridge Preserve HOA. That's when I knew this wasn't accidental. This wasn't a few hikers who got turned around. This was a plan. I start walking down, boots crunching on dead needles, and I'm trying to keep my voice steady because you don't want to be the guy who explodes first, you know what I mean? A woman in leggings and a wide-brim hat turns toward me with this bright, satisfied smile like she's about to sell me a candle subscription and goes, "Oh, are you the trail guide?" I said, "No, I own this land." And she just blinked, like I'd spoken a different language. "But this is the Elk Ridge Trail," she says. Melissa said it loops through the private conservation zone. I didn't even answer her right away, because at that exact moment a teenager climbs my split-rail fence, my fence, to pet an alpaca. The alpaca startles and bolts, and I watch it nearly plow through a flower bed I planted with native sagebrush last year. My hands actually curled into fists. Not because of the flowers, because of the entitlement. Because of the casual way they treated my home, like it was a free sample tray. I stepped closer and raised my voice. "This is private property. None of you have permission to be here. You need to leave." They looked at me like I'd announced the moon was fake. The clipboard guy, and of course there's a clipboard guy, clears his throat and says, "Oh, we were told this trail is part of the HOA's community access plan." "Melissa," the woman repeats, like that name should settle everything. So I ask, "Melissa who?" And he says it like he's introducing a celebrity. "Melissa Jarrett. She's on the HOA board. She said this used to be an old service trail, and since it wasn't posted, it was fine to incorporate it." Incorporate it. Like I'm a line item. Like my land is a shared office printer. I didn't argue with the tourists. They weren't hostile, just clueless. I told them firmly to turn around and get out, and most did. A few rolled their eyes like I was ruining their spiritual hike, and as they filed away I saw the full audacity of it. An archway on stakes that literally said "Trail Continues, Scenic Loop." They had built an entrance into my property, like they were opening a boutique. Back in my cabin, I yanked open the drawer with my land records, deed, surveys, aerial overlays. Everything's still exactly where I left it, because I'm not the kind of man who misplaces 12,000 acres. The HOA bordered me to the east, sure, but the line was clean. Their property ended at the creek. What they'd done was cut almost half a mile into my woods, built structures, invited residents to stroll and picnic and meditate, and whatever else they wanted to call trespassing. And then I found the cherry on top. Near the back fence where their trail snaked along the slope, there was a wooden platform with yoga mats and rolled towels and a laminated sheet that read, "Welcome to HOA Ridge Meditation Knoll. Breathe. Relax. Reflect." I stood there staring at it, picturing somebody exhaling deeply into my property taxes, and I swear I laughed once. Not because it was funny, but because it was so unbelievable my brain needed a pressure valve. By sundown I'm in my truck, engine idling, calling the number printed on one of their signs. It goes straight to voicemail. Hi, you've reached Melissa Jarrett with the Elk Ridge Preserve HOA. Leave a message and I'll get back to you. Be kind. Be aware. Be present. I hung up. Oh, I was present, all right. Next morning I skip breakfast, grab a thermos of burnt coffee, and drive straight to their office. And if you've never seen a modern mountain HOA, let me paint it for you. Faux rustic cabins with perfectly uniform cedar shakes, hiking quotes on welcome signs, ornamental deer statues everywhere like the whole neighborhood got decorated by a Cabela's manager with a trust fund. The HOA office is a reclaimed barn with solar panels, an herb garden out front, and a mailbox shaped like a bear. I park next to a Tesla with Yogamom plates and walk in. The girl at the front desk looks up from her tablet and smiles like a robot programmed for cheer. Good morning. Are you here to register a trail experience? I said, no. I'm here about the trail. I own the land it's on. Her smile twitches. She disappears, and 2 minutes later Melissa Jarrett appears like she's stepping onto a stage. Early 40s, athletic, too much confidence packed into a Patagonia vest, hair pulled into a tight ponytail that looks like it has opinions, silver laptop tucked under her arm like it's part of her skeleton. She extends a hand. Mr. Hayward. Of course. Please come in. She leads me into a glass-walled conference room. On the chalkboard behind her, in neat handwriting, it says Q3 Community Healing Goals. I wish I was making that up. Melissa sits like this as a friendly PDA meeting, opens her laptop, and says, First, let me tell you how grateful we are for the use of the trail. It's brought so much joy to the community. Families reconnecting with nature. Kids learning to identify birds. It's been a huge success. I didn't sit. I said, I never gave you permission. She blinks once, slow. Well, the trail existed informally for years, Mr. Hayward. Your absence sort of created a natural invitation. That's not how land ownership works. She sighs like I'm being emotionally inconvenient. We're not trying to take anything from you. We simply made improvements to a path that was already there. And to be honest, after more than 7 years of public use, there may be a case for a prescriptive easement. We've spoken with the county. And there it is, the moment the air changes. Because trail experience is cute. Community healing is cute. But prescriptive easement? That's not cute. That's a legal crowbar. I stared at her and said, You're telling me that because I wasn't here to physically chase people off, you now get to claim my land? She tilts her head like she's explaining gravity. I'm saying we're open to collaboration. Nature belongs to everyone. The trail is part of the Elk Ridge vision. Healthy bodies, open minds, shared resources. I wanted to throw her laptop through the chalkboard. Instead I said, take the signs down. Remove the structures. Stop sending people onto my property, or I'll sue. She closes her laptop slowly. That would be unfortunate. We've integrated the trail into our district's nature access map. It's on printed brochures. We received a state wellness grant. It's part of the curriculum at Ridgeview Elementary. I actually said out loud, You're teaching school kids to trespass. Don't be dramatic, she says, smiling like she's being merciful. You're one man. This community is hundreds of families. I walked out before I said something that would get me in handcuffs. By the time I got back to the ranch, the plan was simple. If they wanted lines, I'd give them lines they could see from orbit. I called a fencing contractor I trust, Eddie, a man who doesn't ask questions unless they involve measurements and cement mix. And I told him I wanted 10-gauge metal with reinforced steel posts along the eastern half. None of that decorative ranch rail, real barrier, real boundary. I ordered aluminum warning signs, private property, no access, no trespassing, violators prosecuted. We start installing, and within 24 hours, 3 signs are already torn down. Torn down. Like my property rights are a suggestion box. So I replace them with doubled bolts and I mount trail cams, hidden ones, the kind that don't blink. That evening I spot 2 people in yoga gear standing at my gate, staring at the new metal posts like they can't believe nature had the audacity to say no. At midnight I hear something outside the barn, grab a flashlight, and find a sign bent backward with fresh boot prints leading into the trees. And that's when I realized, this wasn't going to stop with polite warnings. These people weren't just entitled, they were organized. It starts with a rumble at sunrise. I think ATVs. Instead it's a crowd, A dozen HOA folks in matching green shirts marching up with reusable water bottles and cardboard signs with eco slogans, and the kind of camera-ready outrage that makes you wonder if there's a documentary crew hiding behind a pine. Somebody's flying a drone. Somebody's live streaming. They zip-tie a banner to my fence that reads, "Nature belongs to all." And in the center, like she was born for this moment, is Melissa, arms crossed, chin lifted, phone already angled for the best light. One guy with a megaphone starts yelling, "We demand public access. We demand the fence be taken down." And the megaphone squeals so loud it scares my alpacas clear across the pasture. Melissa launches into a speech like she's narrating a TED Talk. This land has been part of our community's trail network for years. Today, one man is trying to deny access to generations of families and outdoor lovers. This isn't about property. This is about power and exclusion. I walked right up to my fence and said, loud and clean, "This is private land. Get off it." Melissa smirks. "We're standing on a public access trail that has existed for over 7 years. That creates precedent." "You're standing 2 feet onto my property," I said. "There's no easement, no servitude, no right. Move." She shakes her head like I'm hopeless. "We'll let the county decide." I held up my phone. "Then let's start with the sheriff." That got her attention, but not enough to make them leave. 10 minutes later, 2 deputies pull up. Guys I've dealt with before, when the occasional hunter wanders too far. I hand them copies of my deed, a printed satellite map, a binder of property records with the line highlighted like a kindergarten craft project, because sometimes you have to speak in the language people respect. One deputy nods slowly. The other walks over to Melissa. I can't hear everything she's saying, but I catch the phrase spirituality zone, and I almost laugh. In the end, the deputies tell the group to disperse. Nobody gets arrested, because of course not, but the banner comes down and the yoga army sulks away toward their Range Rovers. Melissa turns back and calls out, "This isn't over. You're setting a dangerous precedent for land exclusion." "Yeah," I yelled back. "Maybe I'll start charging a toll." That night I check the cameras and catch 2 people in dark clothing yanking down signs and spray painting HOA access forever across my metal panel like they're middle schoolers with a grudge. I report it. The deputy gives me that tired tone. "Unless we ID someone, it's misdemeanor vandalism, slow investigation, you know the drill." So I stopped waiting to be rescued by paperwork alone and started building a legal bunker. I ordered motion lights, night vision cams, signs every 50 feet, and I even added QR codes linking to the county GIS map of my parcel boundaries because I wanted it idiot-proof. By the end of the week I had a folder so thick I labeled it, half as a joke and half as a promise, War Crimes, Yelke Ridge Edition. Then I called a land surveyor I'd worked with years ago, Vince Dodd, ex-Navy, low bullshit tolerance, the kind of guy who keeps boundary pins in his glove box, and I told him I needed a map so airtight it could survive a hurricane. Vince shows up with GPS gear, historical plat maps, and a 6-pack of lukewarm ginger beer, and after a few hours walking the tree line he goes, "Jesus. They aren't even close. They're almost half a mile inside your property in 2 places." But the real twist, the piece that made my lawyer's eyes light up later, comes when Vince pulls out a roll of yellowed county records, one dated 1898. He taps it and says, "This is the foundational deed. Continuous private ownership. No easements. No transfers. This is legacy property." And right there, standing in my woods with the sun dropping behind the ridge, it hit me, Melissa wasn't just mistaken. She'd been building a story that only worked if nobody checked the receipts. I didn't stop there. I tracked down an old ranger, Tom Elkins, pushing 80, still sharp, still furious at what he called subdivision people treating God's breathing room like a shopping mall. Over black coffee and bacon at a diner near the county line, Tom tells me that trail used to be a logging service road in the 70s, closed in 1994 after a mudslide, posted as hazardous, never reopened. No 7 years of peaceful public use. Just overgrowth and troublemakers. I got his statement on video, clear, time-stamped, confident, and I marched into the county office with a folder thick enough to stop a bullet. The clerk starts to recite the HOA's prescriptive easement argument, and I cut him off, laid down the deed, Vince's survey overlay, Tom's statement, and dated satellite images showing nothing but brush until the HOA's little wellness project bulldozed its way in. You could see the moment his brain shifted from annoying complaint to, "Oh, this is going to be a problem." I mailed a cease and desist to the HOA, addressed to Melissa, with certified copies of everything. Her response? A snide email. We believe your interpretation of land history is incomplete. The HOA will continue to pursue recognition of public access rights. I forwarded it to my lawyer and said, we're done talking. Then local news runs a segment, Backyard Battles, a trail divided. They film Melissa in front of my fence, gesturing like she's giving a tour of Yosemite, talking about shared heritage and outdated attitudes, and I'm sitting there watching my own property turned into a moral lesson for daytime television. That night, the fight stopped being symbolic. I woke up after 3 a.m. not to a sound, but to heat, orange light flickering on my ceiling like a bad dream. I run outside barefoot, shotgun in one hand, phone in the other, and my East Tool barn is fully engulfed. Flames clawing through the roof, black smoke rolling up, the sickening pop of something pressurized giving out. The fire department takes 40 minutes to reach me, and by then it's ash. 3 ATVs, riding mower, welders, a winter's worth of tools gone. Melted steel and scorched earth. The fire chief takes one look at the burn pattern and says, this wasn't electrical. Accelerant. He didn't have to say the word arson. It was hanging in the air like the smoke. I handed the deputies everything, footage, threats, Melissa's emails, but the cameras had cut out right before the fire because life loves irony. So I upgraded everything. Cellular upload to the cloud. Floodlights with sirens. And I hired a remote security guy out of Durango, who apparently considers professional to mean drones with night vision doing rotating sweeps over my property, like I'm guarding a military base. 2 nights later, the new cameras catch 3 hooded figures with bolt cutters and spray paint. Grainy, but clear enough to notice one of them had a limp, a particular shoulder roll. I'd seen it before at an HOA meeting years ago, when I'd sat in briefly to argue against some trail expansion. His name was Greg Toller, local green advocate, HOA loudmouth, and apparently now amateur saboteur. That's when my lawyer, Dana, said, now we have a person. We filed criminal complaints for trespass and vandalism, pushed the suspected arson hard, demanded an injunction to keep HOA members off my land, and subpoenaed their expenditure records, because I wanted to know if this whole community vision had been funded like a covert operation. The first hearing felt like walking into a beige concrete box designed by someone who hates joy. I wore jeans and a blazer like Dana told me. Melissa walked in wearing sage green flowy nonsense and hiking boots like she was about to lead a vision quest in the courtroom. Dana laid it out, deed history, survey, ranger affidavit, cam footage, and those satellite images that showed one ugly truth. No trail existed until the HOA carved one. When the HOA lawyer tried to talk about 8 years of peaceful use, Dana just said, satellite imagery, Your Honor, and slid photo after photo onto the table like playing cards. Even the judge chuckled when Dana pointed at an old image and said, if this is a maintained community trail, I respectfully request a tetanus shot. Melissa took the stand and tried the soft, teacher voice. We didn't mean to intrude. Nature doesn't recognize fences. Dana's cross-exam was surgical. Did you ask permission? No. Did you have any written authorization? No. Did you use HOA funds on land you didn't own? Melissa started to answer, and that's when Dana dropped the twist we'd been waiting for. Buried in their expenditures was a $3,000 line item. Trail enhancement, Jared oversight, paid to a contractor, signed off by Melissa alone, no board vote, no approval, just her signature and a vague memo. The courtroom went still like somebody had turned off the oxygen. The judge's face changed. Not angry, disappointed, which is worse. He issued a temporary injunction on the spot, all access suspended, structures removed within 10 business days, violations treated as contempt. Melissa looked like she'd swallowed a pine cone. The full trial hit a month later, and by then it was a circus. Reporters. Segment titles. People in town wearing shirts that said, I stand with the fence. Elk Ridge folks showing up like a cult-themed yoga retreat. Dana didn't flinch. She built a timeline of the incursion, the vandalism, the threats, the barn fire, and then she brought in the arson angle with the fire chief's testimony and a receipt showing industrial solvent purchased on an HOA credit card days before the blaze. The judge allowed it in. Then Greg Toller took the stand, fidgeting like a kid caught cheating. Under oath he admitted he was part of the nighttime fence protest. He claimed Melissa didn't directly order anything, and Dana leaned in and said, So what did she say? He swallowed. She said if we didn't act, the community would lose access forever. Not a confession, but close enough to smell like smoke. Melissa got called again and tried her righteous speech about public good and human rights, and the judge finally cut through it with a tone like a blade. Ms. Jarrett, you are not being tried for your beliefs. You are being tried for trespass, property damage, and coordinated misconduct. 2 days later, the verdict came back unanimous, guilty on all civil counts. The judge awarded damages just shy of $1 million, property loss, legal costs, security, emotional distress, and referred the arson evidence to the county prosecutor for criminal investigation. He also ruled Melissa's unilateral HOA spending was fraudulent misappropriation, and the HOA itself got ordered into reorganization under independent oversight. When the judge read out Melissa's sentence, 3 years with the possibility of early release after 18 months, her hands actually shook. For the first time in all of this, she didn't have a camera to perform for. Just consequences. I walked out, gave one statement that felt like scraping grit off my tongue. This was never about trails. This was about property, law, and basic respect. I didn't start this fight. I just ended it. And then I drove home. The next morning I woke up before dawn, not out of habit, but because my body didn't know what to do without dread. No emails. No court dates. No drone buzzing like a mechanical wasp. Just quiet sky and the sharp scent of scorched pine where the barn used to be. Within the week, workers installed the final fence upgrades, taller, reinforced pressure sensors at the gates, lighting that turns the eastern perimeter into daylight if anything moves. And I did one petty, satisfying thing I'm not even ashamed of. I built my own archway at the old trailhead where their Elk Ridge Life Trail had started, and I burned the words into black walnut with an acetylene torch, private land. No access. No exceptions. Under it, I bolted a plaque cut from twisted metal pulled out of my burned barn. This land was not shared. It was taken. It has been reclaimed. The HOA collapsed quietly after that, resignations, audits, apologies. Melissa became someone else's problem. I stopped tracking every development because my job was back where it belonged, healing my land. I tore up their gravel paths, pulled down their signs, and burned the whole pile in a bonfire with one match and the cheapest whiskey I could find. I kept one thing, that meditation platform, but I rebuilt it into a deer season lookout, because if I learned anything, it's that you don't let other people decide what your space means. A few months later, a buddy asked me, sitting on my porch with a beer, if I'd ever open the trail to the community again. On my terms, for charity maybe. I laughed, not cruel, just clean, and I pointed toward that ridge line where the last HOA sign used to stand. That ridge used to mean nothing to them, I said. Now it means stop. So here's what I want to ask you, because people get real passionate about this one. Where's the line between community good and outright theft when somebody decides your property is a public resource? If you were me, would you have fought as hard, or would you have tried to compromise earlier, even after the vandalism, even after the fire? Drop your take in the comments. Tell me if you're team fence, team share, or team call the sheriff and let the paperwork speak. And if you've ever had someone cross your boundaries and act like you're the problem, share that story too. Because I'll tell you right now, respect doesn't happen by accident. Sometimes you have to build it, post it, and defend it, bolt by bolt.